happy birthday to her. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what do you do after you finish the book, you've waited a few days, you read through it, you cleaned up any little discrepancies, you feel like it's pretty good, you think it's ready to go to market. What do you do next? So you have some choices. You could self-publish it, or you could seek a traditional publisher. Seeking a traditional publisher is a multi-part effort. And usually, traditional publishers don't just take submissions from anybody. They have to go through an agent or a recommendation. You know, if you know an author who's already been published and has a publisher, ask them to make the introduction to one of the editors at the publishing house, because that's how you get to, that's really how it happens. Occasionally, somebody does stumble across a publisher who has an open call for new submissions, and you send in your book and then they accept it. That does not happen very often. The other thing about a publisher is this. People think that, like, if you've read about Stephen King's journey to being a published author, it sounds like, wow, that's awesome. So this is basically it, as far as I can remember, hopefully correctly, in a nutshell. Stephen King was a teacher at a girls' school, and he didn't like it, and he would stay up and he would write stories, and they weren't getting published. And his wife said, he was working on one story, and it was pretty dark, and she said, submit this one. And he said, I don't think it's any good. And she talked him into it. But he did know somebody at a publishing house. So he submitted it through his friend at the publishing house. They accepted it. That book was Carrie, which became a bestseller. He immediately got an advance. He immediately started making money. They turned it into a movie. He became extremely wealthy off that one book, and then went on to have a very long and lucrative career writing books and for movies. That doesn't really happen that often, if at all, anymore, I don't think. It's, for one thing, it's very unusual for a book to sell well without a lot of money being thrown at it for promotion. And most publishers just don't put the money into especially a rookie, a brand new first time published author. They don't put money into their efforts to get exposed. So if you get an advance, you know how an advance works is they give you some money on an advance of future earnings. So let's say they gave you $1,000. Until your book is sold enough that you've made that $1,000 on royalties from the sale of that book, you won't get another cent from them. And if that takes a long time, you probably won't get more books made. They probably won't print more books of yours. So it's difficult to get a publisher. It's really hard. I got more entries or more requests, more queries for books, for me to publish books, than I ever published. And quite frankly, a lot of them were really, really horrible. If they had followed these things, the things on my list, my master list here that we've been talking about over the last week and so, if they had followed that stuff, their books would probably have been better, because some of them had good storylines. They just didn't know how to make the story work. So that's a problem. Even if you have a really great story, to get your book in front of a publisher, actually, an editor at a publishing house is a better way to put it. The publisher is the publishing house. You want to get it in front of the editor at the publishing house to have them determine whether or not it is something that they would want to publish. The other option is to self-publish. Now, self-publishing is an odd thing these days. Way back, years and years ago, my mom wanted to write a book, and she looked into how to go about publishing it, and she bought several different books about how to publish her book. And back then, there wasn't the opportunity to self-publish as there is today, which is pretty much publishing on demand. It's print on demand. So POD, print on demand. You'll find it in t-shirts, print on demand t-shirts, all kinds of things, because we have this fantastic technology now that allows people to do that. But way back then they didn't. And so they had vanity presses. And a vanity press, they still exist right now. A vanity press, you pay them usually as much money as it would cost for them to print maybe a couple thousand of your books. So we're talking thousands of dollars, and they print thousands of copies of your book, and then it's up to you to find out where you're going to sell them. So then you have to go hoof it around to bookshops or wherever, or whatever, to try and sell them. Now, where that vanity press idea is a good idea is that it's cheaper to have your books printed under those circumstances, just because it's a lot of books being printed at one time, so it lowers the overall cost of each book. So the cost of each book becomes less, and it's really good if you're going to do something like you're giving seminars and you're in front of a group of people and there's 2,000 people in your audience, and you figure each one of those people is probably going to buy a book. That's a really good way to do it. If you are, you have some other thing, like you want to express an idea to a group of people that you're having a seminar with or something, you might have a whole bunch of books printed and pass those out at your seminar. Those are all really valuable ways to do that. But instead of calling it a publisher, you should just call it a printer, because that is what they're doing. Although they call them vanity press or vanity publishers, because the vanity comes in that you couldn't get a real publisher to publish your book. So vanity, your own self-inflated sense of self, made you think that you should go and print your book on your own and try and sell it. Of course, that's BS, and we know that. The real kind of self-publishing in this day and age is where you prepare your book file. So you do everything. You've written it, you edited it, or you hire someone. You make a cover, or you hire someone. And then you've got this all put together, and you turn it into a PDF, which is a portable document file, and you send it to a company. And then when somebody orders a copy of your book, they print it and bind it and mail it out. And they do really nice work. And early on, I used different printers across the country to print books, and then came to the conclusion that it did not behoove me to keep a warehouse full of books. It just didn't make sense to put all that money and all that effort into storing books, and also the stress of worrying that those books might get damaged while they're being stored. So all of the books we sell are print on demand. Now, they're not all print on demand from the same company. There are 3 different companies that I use, and I can talk to you about those if there's any interest in wanting to know more about print on demand. But print on demand is a valid way to create your book. There are people who will view that as a vanity press and will act as though you didn't really do the hard work because you have your book in a print on demand situation. And of course, that's not true either. It is very hard to get a contract with a publisher. And I'm going to talk a little bit about when you work with a publisher, how that comes down. So, and I have firsthand knowledge of this for myself, for my daughter, and also for people who are my own authors that I have published their books, who had previously published their books with other publishers. And this is what they've said. So I trust my experience, my daughter's experience, and the experience of all those people. You sign up to work with a publisher. And if they're a good publisher, they want to make sure that your book is the best that it can be. And so they have an editor. And the editor goes through your book, hopefully with you. And there are 2 different ways they're editing it. One is they're going to go through and they're going to edit it for punctuation and spelling and, just grammar, that sort of thing. And the other way is they're going to edit it for continuity, for the story, how the story unfolds. And in that regard, that area right there is where there can be a lot of problems, because authors, this is their baby. You're an author, you've written a book, it's your baby. You don't want anyone to mess with your baby, and then they're telling you, oh, I'm sorry, your baby can't live in this location, they have to live in this other location, and your baby can't say these things, they have to say this other stuff, and I don't know, maybe your baby's the wrong race. And those are just some of the things that I've heard people say that they got from their editors. In fact, one person, I will not say the name of the publisher or the person or the author, but she had her book took place in Las Vegas, which is a city she was very familiar with. And she talked about some things that were in Las Vegas, and her editor, who had never been to Las Vegas, or if she had, she'd been to like the Strip and stayed on the Strip and went to shows and stuff. She said, that's not there. You can't put that in there. That's not reality. And this person, the author, argued and said, no, it is true. And the editor insisted that she take that out. And she had to take it out. So that's not fun. That would be really, really frustrating if you're an author and you are in that position where your baby now is being just taken over by somebody who doesn't have your same vision. There are editors who want to protect your voice. They want to make sure that they are not, robbing you of that opportunity to express yourself the way you want to express yourself. Those are good editors. But a lot of publishers don't have good editors. Or they have editors that I don't even know if they're paying any attention to what the editors are doing. So that is one problem. The other problem is that there's so many middlemen when you go through a publisher that by the time you get your royalties, it's just pennies per copy that you end up with. And that can happen when you're self-publishing too. It really can happen. And this is why the price of books keep going up, because if the bookstore is going to only want to pay 30% of the cover price. So let's say your cover price is, for ease of mathematics, which is not my strong suit, let's say your cover price is $10. The bookstore is only going to pay $3. It costs $2.36 to publish it. That means that what's that? 70 some cents, 60 some, 64 cents. And then you have to share that with the publisher. So you can see that that's a problem. There are some publishers that give you more, and under those circumstances, that is something that you would ask for. I think what happens is people, when they go and they're trying to find a publisher, and they actually get one that says, yeah, we'll work with you. Here's a contract. They'll sign it. They aren't even reading the small print because they're so excited. They're so thrilled that they've got a contract. They don't even care. And the small print is that they aren't going to have a very big royalty. Generally, royalties are expressed as a percentage of the cover price, but because in this day and age there is such competition in the publishing world for shelf space in a bookstore, whether it's a actual virtual bookstore or a virtual bookstore or an actual brick and mortar store, it doesn't matter. Their shelves are the same. There's competition for what's going to be on those shelves, and how you're going to be able to be seen on those shelves is really difficult. So, that can be an issue. So, if you self-publish, benefit, you have full control over the creative process. You can decide what the cover's going to look like. You can hire your own cover artist. You can decide what the interior is going to look like. You can hire your own interior designer. Of course, you can do those things yourself, but I recommend that unless you are a graphic artist, you do not. You can decide all this. You can decide on the price. You can decide all that, and your profit's going to be higher because you don't have to share it with as many people as you do as if you go through a traditional publisher. But the problem is then you don't have the distribution exposure of a traditional publisher. And that's a big deal. So if you want to know more about self-publishing and which ones I use, I will talk to you in another video about that. I'm already at 15 minutes and I've gone on lots further than I wanted to about this. Yeah, I feel really strongly that people are getting ripped off, that there are scammers out there that'll say, yeah, I can design your cover, and then it's something crappy, or I can find you a publisher, you know, I'll be your agent, and they're just a scam artist. If they ask for money up front, that's not a publisher, that's a vanity press. If they ask for money up front for just vague things, you need to know exactly what they're going to do for you. You know, it's a transaction like any other. And those are important lessons that you have to learn because, again, as I said yesterday, it's a business. And if you approach it like a business, you'll do better than if you approach it like an act of the heart. You know, if it's just one of your love languages, writing books, that's great. But even then, you don't want to get ripped off, okay? All right, you guys, 16 minutes I'm in, and I'm going to call it quits here. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for checking in. Bye.